Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk episode 662. We had a brief interlude last week because things just didn't work out, but I hope you enjoyed our interview with David Rossi, who's the string arranger, lovely bloke based in Copenhagen. Do check that out, it's online, you can watch it. In fact, I put the links everywhere. This is the Sonic Talk podcast. We generally talk about everything to do with music technology and production and synthesizers and all of that kind of stuff. So I do hope you can join us on one of the many platforms if you're watching this, or either on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch. We also release audio versions, which you can find on Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Alexa, iTunes, all of that usual kind of place. And I want to say thank you very much to our friends over in the chat rooms. We've got our YouTube chatties, we've got our IRC chatties, and then we've got everybody together with Discord and Facebook and all of those other things. I want to say thank you very much to those guys and gals for joining us. Also want to just draw your attention to our Patreon if you feel like supporting us. So we've got our Patreon. I've been putting some more exclusive stuff up there. Last one was extra sounds for the Strager, the Make Noise Strager review. I put up literally beginning of the week. Oh, was it Friday? Maybe it was Friday. I can't remember what the day is. Maybe it was Monday. I honestly can't remember. But it's going, and if you want to join us there, some very reasonably priced tiers, sonictalk.com/Patreon. No, it's not. It's Patreon's. It's this. This is what I'm trying to say. It's patreon.com/Sonicstate. Crikey, it's a good job I'm not in advertising, eh? I wouldn't be able to get my message across. And so, yes, we'll say hello to our guests. We've got a full panel this week, which is fantastic. We'll start over there with, let's start with Steve Hillier, who we haven't had on for a while. Steve Hillier, okay, songwriter, producer, synthesist, all kinds of things he does over there in his studio. DJer, although perhaps not so much of that, unless you're doing some live streaming. How are you, Steve? You well?
I wasn't really tempted to do the DJing live stream thing because I think, as I mentioned about a year ago, I can't think of a way of making it interesting. So instead I've been doing other things. But no, I'm good. It's nice to be back. Thanks. Also nice to have the weather back. So.
Oh, isn't it just? Yeah, I spent yesterday, I actually went fishing for the first time because the lakes were open, and I spent all day walking around the lake in the lovely weather, not catching anything, but it was still a lovely day. Apart from the fact I had a terrific hangover because it was also Monday was the first day in the UK we could have people round again, and I did, and I really overdid it, and I must learn because I'm old enough to know better. But anyway, I'm glad you're doing okay, and lovely to see you. And got any where should people look for your stuff and your creative output?
The best place to go to is stevehillier.net. That's my website.
Right.
I just released the last of a trilogy that I'd worked on during the lockdown, which was a sort of piano and quite minimal electronic interpretations of songs that I wrote in my old band, Dubstar. And it's been really enjoyable actually to revisit those songs, and also to make a string of releases where it really is just a question of doing something for the love of music as opposed to anything that's career based or financially based. It's really just been doing it for the love. So that's been a nice thing. So if you're interested in that, yeah, absolutely, it is. And that energy thing is something that, shouldn't be discounted. It's very easy to get distracted by career choices and money. But in this case, I wasn't. And so if anyone's interested in that, they can find out more details at stevehillier.net.
Excellent. Well, succinctly put. Nice to have you as well. So we've also got Mr. Ty Unwin, who's there in his studio. Oh, I can see. Is that the reissue ARP 2600 full size behind you? You're in the vintage synth room. Or actually, does this mean you're in the studio again? Have you refitted?
It's almost, well, it's not almost finished. It's getting there. I've
got basically some shelves.
Yeah. I'm back in. The gear's in. It's just there's this thing called cables and wires, but I'm back at that stage, so that's fine. So I'm in room 1 at the moment, and it will hopefully by September there'll be 3. There'll be 3 rooms, and they'll all have their individual purposes. But this is room 1, and everything's here, just no cabling at all.
Can I take a guess and suggest that might be the synth room?
No, this isn't the synth room.
Oh, it's just...
This is no. This isn't the synth room. This is the main room. This isn't the synth room. I know.
Right.
Don't.
But they've all got. Yeah, but you're bound to have synths in all the rooms because
There are synths in. Basically, this has got 10 synths in here, and so this is the room where these are my favourite 10 synths, and then there's a room with some of the lesser appealing synths, and then there's another room
with the ones left
with the reject child that I lock away in the cupboard and I never feed.
Basically. The Mrs. Havisham collection, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm only laughing because as I'm saying it, I'm actually genuinely thinking, God, you're such a twat. As I'm explaining this, I just realised the stupidity of the whole situation. So,
well, not really, because I'd be the same. I've got a load of synths here. There are a load of synths that are kind of like under a cloth that aren't used regularly. There's ones you probably can't see, it's out of focus, but there's a thing back there that are the ones that are on the set. There are ones that I grabbed recently. In fact, I don't think you can see that, but there's a table sort of here which has got whatever it is I'm currently working on in terms of review. In fact, I have the circuit tracks arrived this very day. Just want to point that out. These are the.
Oh, what a lovely profile!
It's very very much smaller, and I think I can switch it on. Let's see what happens if I switch it on. Well, the lights will go on, that's for sure. So let's see how they. There we go. Here the light's going. There's a live light switch on of. There we go. Oh look, and it'll. Does it play?
Nice.
Well, it would do. It's not playing. I don't know why it's not playing. It was earlier. I've already broken it. No, I haven't. But that's the next one in the queue. I've currently got the Korg SQ64 over on that one, which is coming in. But yeah, so I can identify. It's it's mine have to move around a lot more, whereas you can decide, and I guess you can decide where they're going to go and whether things get relegated or need to be brought in for a project you're working on. That makes perfect sense. There's no need to feel ashamed.
Oh, believe me, I am.
Well, anyway, lovely to have you. We've also got Mr. Dominic Hawken today, who is launching the new Mr. Wiggly video. Right, this is your. Not launching your new plugin. I'm just going to
new plugin. Yeah, I've launched yes, thank you for the ability to plug it. I'm launching a new range of plugins. The first one I've just finished is called the Incinerator, which came as a result of being on this show and talking about recording into microphones and speakers stuck inside an incinerator. So please do go and check that out. It's mrwiggly.co.uk. I'm really, really happy. I've spent my lockdown learning how to code plugins, basically. As my next project after the sleep music app, Snuggle Sounds thing. So, but I am genuinely blown away by the way it sounds, and I'm like, well, this is really cool. Ty bought it this morning, and is not known for mincing his words, so it'd be interesting to see what he thinks of it, because I wouldn't even allow me to send him one. So we might have to finish the show early if he looks a little bit angry, but so I'm not stressed out by that whatsoever. But yeah, it's gone live today. It's 20 quid, and so the idea is to try and keep it cheap and make it sound good. And so yeah, mrwiggly.co.uk, and you can. I think the main thing is if you stick it on presets or drum sounds and stuff, it just makes them pump a little bit more. The idea is that you're sending them out of the box through some kind of amp or system or incinerator box or whatever, and it just brings a little bit of life and movement to your sounds, and has worked really well actually. I've been using it with Dave's Oberheim plugin, and
the OBE,
which already sounds amazing. But actually, if you sprinkle a little bit of that on some of the lead sounds, it just makes it
sounds even more better. Well,
yeah, even more better, even more gooder.
So we know what you've been up to. So yeah, if you head over to this is lower third there, mrwiggly.co.uk, you can find out.
Yes, please go and check it out. There's a video and all that.
Do go and check it out.
Can I give my review?
Oh, okay. I haven't tried it yet myself, but
yeah. I mean, honestly, I genuinely can't think of a better way of spending 20 quid, because it's. I love reamping anyway, and I do it in guitar rig loads. And one of my favourite drum sample libraries is Electroacoustic by the Sonicstate guys, where they basically did exactly that. They took loads of drum machines and they put them in a really nice room and reamped everything with a whole different array of mics and amps and whatever. So the concept itself is something that I love the idea of, and it's what's great about this is it's incredibly simple, and because DOM's actually, you as well as having the wet signal, you've got separate control of the wet and the dry, so it's really easy to get exactly the right balance. And there's an extra delay and reverb, which are fine, but it's the reamping that's the special bit, and everything I stuck through it sounded fantastic. And I tell you what, it's easy to get the sound of. It's easy to get those sounds from like Black Celebration, the Depeche Mode album, where that was well known for everything was reamped. All the synths were basically stuck through keyboard amps and guitar amps and then mic'd up. And every single time I was messing with all the sounds, all I kept thinking was, that sounds like Black Celebration. So, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not just saying this because Dom's on it, but absolutely Dom, fantastic. Really, really good.
There we go.
Really good.
Testimonial indeed.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's lovely that that all went well, because it could have been very awkward, eh?
Can I just say before we carry on, can I just say, can you put all four of us up? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Is it me, or is this just this is just the best game of whack-a-mole ever?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got the glasses on. If I take my glasses off, I can't see it. But there we go. We're almost.
It's like with that long-lost family.
I think I should maybe get sponsorship for some caffeine-based hair product, and then we might be in the money, folks. You know, we'll have to see. Right, okay, let's get on to some other stuff. Actually, before we go, I'm going to just pop in. No, we won't. I'm going to go. So main topics here. Oh yeah, I thought this was actually pretty cool. This is now I don't know if I can pronounce his name properly. Christophe Duquesne, or Duquesne, he'll say.
Hello, I'm Christophe Duquesne from Hawken Audio and La Voix du Luthier, and I'm here at Expressive with a brand new Osmose. As you know, the Osmose is running the same engine as the Continuum, the Eigen Matrix, and I wanted to show you today a specific feature which is named pressure-weighted Portamento. It's a patented feature, so you will have it only on the Osmose and of course on the Continuum, and it allows you to have a continuous pitch even on a keyboard like the Osmose. The principle is that you press one finger and then you press a second finger. With the relative pressure between the two fingers, you will precisely control the pitch in between the two notes you are pressing. So that's how it works.
Got that, folks?
Yep.
Right, it's quite a long video and there are a lot of examples in there, but that's possibly not the best one. That's not the one I would have gone with as the first example. But this is because obviously Osmose was trailed some time ago. This is the Expressive E keyboard that's got the Hawken Audio, the engine in it, the Eigen Matrix engine in it that's actually on board, and it's this really interesting kind of custom bespoke keyboard mechanism, and this is just news of one of the features it's got, which is the time-based portamento, and there's some really good examples in there, and I thought that was kind of I think they released that on Friday, and I just thought, oh, that's nice. I know, I'll come to you first, Steve, because I don't know, have you tried the whole sort of MPE kind of / world of this sort of thing?
No, I haven't so far. I haven't actually had a chance. You know, when I saw this, my initial reaction was kind of, okay, so what? But then I realised that's my default reaction to pretty much everything in life. So I just sort of continued with it and watched the video. And I must admit, as the video progresses, I think you're right, Nick, that first sound that they use doesn't really show off really much of anything that the keyboard and this can do. But what really struck me as the video went on was the combination of that kind of expressiveness with the Eigen Matrix sound engine. Because we were hearing playing that really just brought that sound engine to life. And I know it's designed for these kind of special kind of controllers. But the combination of the two really caught my imagination. And so you could hear all these sort of physical modeling type sounds being played in a way that was as you would expect maybe the original sort of instrument to sound, which was extraordinary. But then it kind of made me wonder that, you know, you've got to be a good player to get the best out of this kind of stuff. Or at least that's what I thought at first. And then I kind of thought, well, about actually maybe where this stuff gets really interesting is when people who aren't great players get hold of it. And they're just finding stuff that maybe us who can play just wouldn't consider.
Yeah.
Routing that stuff in interesting ways through the sound engine and maybe taking us to a completely new place. So so I checked out the price of this thing, which is, I think, 2,158 euros,
yeah, I got it there. 2,000. Yeah, it was always going to be a couple of €1,000, and this actually, you know, but bear in mind this is a completely different type of keyboard plus the engine. I don't think it's massively unreasonable, considering you would be maybe buying a Summit, a Novation Summit, or I don't know. There are other instruments of around about the £2,000 mark. So you know, it's.
Yeah, well, it certainly interested me, and particularly the sound of the Egan Matrix engine and that keyboard together. You know, this could be actually where I jump into these ultra expressive controllers, as opposed to things that are just switches like this.
Yeah, exactly. There is that. It's interesting, isn't it? So I suppose, you know, that you could, with something like this, you know, you can in fact have, because the Egan Matrix seems to be very, I looked at the interface, isn't particularly pleasant to look at or work with, but you know, you could actually have a sound that is a one finger sound and not in a kind of wave state sort of the entire band kind of way, but the amount of expression you can have from moving across a few axes is what makes it quite exciting.
It's essentially more like a real instrument. I mean, we had this conversation a few weeks ago when we were talking about MPE and what that opens up. And all that this really does is it's a combination of the MPE of things like the Roly, but on a totally more conventional, it seems, keyboard in terms of the action, combined with the engine. And I mean, because years ago I looked at the Continuum. When I was getting the Roly, I looked at the Continuum, and the thing is about the Continuum, exactly as Steve was saying, really, I loved the sounds, but I just wasn't that keen on the, it was, you kind of say, the action, on the Continuum feel, on the feel of it. It just didn't.
It's quite unfamiliar, isn't it? It's a different.
It just didn't work for me. So the moment I knew that the Osmose was going to have the same engine, and with a more traditional keyboard, that was it for me. I mean, so I pre-ordered one on, I think they announced it at 6, and I pre-ordered it at 6:05. You know, it's that kind of. The moment I saw what it could do, it just rung all the bells for me.
I think, it's interesting. I mean, when they came here, and that was just a 3D printed kind of prototype, but I have to say, I was really skeptical because, you know, all of these kind of, you immediately think, oh, this is going to be wacky and not really kind of, you're going to have to look. But I was playing it because it's got all these, it's got release velocity, attack velocity, aftertouch velocity, so not only the pressure but the speed at which and it's got secondary, so you've got an initial aftertouch, there's a lot, and then you've got the wiggle left to right, and it felt, because the way it was programmed, it felt very expressive and really, but also familiar, because I could still throw the chord shapes without breaking my fingers like I do, because that's the thing, I can't do that on a C-board, because it just really hurts, because your fingers aren't really designed to do that so much. That's what I found.
You have to, like we said before, and like Rich and I have had many conversations about it. With all the Roly stuff, you have to. It's like learning a new instrument. You have to train your hand to do things, basically. But it's not a lot of unnatural things. And I think with this, it sidesteps a lot of that. And more to the point, the most important thing is that when people play now, and it winds me up every time I see it when they do the wobble, where all they're really doing is playing aftertouch. So they're pressing down to get the vibrato, but they insist on doing the wobble on the notes.
Well, I think it's like wah-wah face, isn't it? I mean, you can't help yourself sometimes. It's just the way it goes.
You can help yourself. Yeah, you're not doing anything, so pack it in. But anyway, so now they can do the wobble, and it actually does something. So that, for me, is the most important thing.
I don't know, Wawa Face. That's a contender for this week's title, isn't it? Dominic, obviously, this is going to sound better with Incinerator.
Clearly, it needs an Incinerator on it. But it's the hot faders as well, and the DJs are going.
Oh, please don't start me up.
Ty and Steve mentioning it, it's the integration between that and the sound engine, which I think is brilliant, because we've had auto legato forever, whereas it will legato if you don't release the previous note, but you do, and it doesn't have legato. And I always used to find it frustrating, because I am a player, that you couldn't adjust that speed without grabbing the knob and adjusting the speed. So it's a brilliant idea, and it sounds amazing. With what they've done. My one tiny concern is at the very beginning of the video, he says it's a patented technology, and if it's in combination with what they've got, I think that's great. I'd hate to see people patenting applications for MPE and MIDI 3, MIDI 2.0 because they've come up with them. This is a great example of something that can be done with MPE and MIDI 2 technology as a controller keyboard, right? And so, I don't quite know where they sit, but I'd hate to think that I couldn't go out and make something with a similar functionality to control something else. Or, I don't know if you know more about that. But
well, I do. Because the thing that they were very clear on when they came here for the presentation, which seems like such a long time ago now, I haven't had anyone in the studio for over a year, is the sensors and everything on that keyboard is nothing. It's very, very high resolution, so it can only talk. The Egan Matrix is designed for the similar levels of resolution, so it's kind of outside of the scope of MIDI even, maybe MIDI 2.0, I don't know. So I don't know that it is actually, and you get the same thing if you've got the Hawken to Continuum, you get the same degree of sensitivity and the granularity. The resolution is very high, so you couldn't necessarily say, well, in a MIDI 2.0 thing, it would be something that they copyright. It's actually the whole control mechanism that
makes complete sense. Yeah, complete sense, because they've obviously spent a lot of time. It works brilliantly. It's not cheap to produce. It's amazing. It just threw a little flag, because he said, you'll only see this on our keyboard. We got to use those things for everyone. But yeah, I totally agree. Can't knock anything else that's been said before me. It sounds great in that particular application. It, funnily enough, does sound like something that is easy to, if you play piano, if you play keyboards,
it's easier to get playing
style.
It is easier to get your head around. Definitely easier to get your head around. There's no doubt about it. And then let's see if we just go here. It also says, it was going to be available, I think, the beginning of last year, spring or summer last year. But obviously, there's been stuff that's happened since then, as we know. Now it says available in 2021, whatever that means. But hopefully, I don't know. Maybe Ty's had updates, because I guess as a backer, they might be sending you kind of, don't worry, it's coming.
Yeah, they have. They've been sending you updates of what stage they're at. It's literally since the date was announced. Really, they've been really good in keeping you updated in all the problems. I think the latest one, because I'll be honest with you, I just thought it's going to arrive when it arrives, because no one can predict anything at the moment. So
yeah, well, that's true.
I think they were saying first deliveries are something like September or something like that. Okay. I think they're doing final testing. I think it said June, July, and then I think it's the end of the summer, beginning of autumn.
Right.
So I think.
Okay. That's cool. Okay, nice to. Anyway, check them out. Expressive.com, and that's the Osmose. I think it's time for a word from our friends. Our friends.
Isotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse Isotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the Isotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on Isotope Producers Club, head to isotope.com.
And you can also get a free 7-day trial with that. And if you're also interested, we can give you a bit of extra discount on well, not on subscriptions, but if you're buying any Isotope stuff, if you go to isotope.com/Sonic Talk and use the code Sonic10 at checkout, you can save yourself 10% on the other stuff they do as well. Right, so let's see what's the next one. Dom's Incinerator. I flipped it round, didn't I? We'll do. I think we'll do this one because I had it at the end of the list and I didn't want to. This is something new from Soma Electronics. Vlad in all his kind of fantastic Carl Sagan voiceover majesty here. This is the Cosmos Drifting Memory Station. It's kind of a looper that's not predictable, which sounds like a really bad idea.
Station for a deep meditative mind. Whether you are a singer, a keyboardist, or a guitar player, Cosmos will help you create amazing, evolving soundscapes right on the fly.
Oh, you could get lost in that for ages. And in fact, many people do. This is the news of the new Soma Laboratories Cosmos, which is this kind of, well, it's... they call it now. What do they actually call it? They call it a drifting memory station. So there's sort of various modulatable things. You know, so you've got actually quite a small amount of memory, which I think is 44 seconds. But then there are all these things that it'll do, reverse and wobble. And one thing that was quite interesting. I mean, you know, Soma stuff always has a different take on it, and it's definitely got that. One thing that was common to all of the demos that they had is the people that were demoing it quite often were seeing it for the first time and they all looked really puzzled and they tried to figure out what the hell was going on, where the loop point was. So it's not traditional in any way from that point of view, but it's very Soma Laboratories. I don't know, Steve, have you ever you're looking a little bit like, what the hell is this thing? It's but have you tried any of the Soma Lab stuff? There's a thing, it has an aesthetic which is actually very pleasing to use, generally speaking.
Do you know, I did try one out in a rehearsal room a couple of years ago before lockdown, and I love this expansive, you know, drifting sound. What I was sort of like pulling a little face at there was that even in the description, I was just trying to get my head around what this unit actually was doing. So it's looping, but it's not looping in a predictable way. Well, that sounds great. And then what would you use it for? I don't really know.
Well, big washes of sound, I think. Let me see if I can... this is achieved in 3 ways: by a mathematical shift based on the relationship between the large prime numbers, the size of all the delay. Okay, I'm lost already. Right. But I think it's...
Okay, well, I'm a big fan of prime numbers.
and delays.
Where would we be without them? Let's be honest, guys.
That's true.
So I get that. So basically, they're doing calculations based on primes, and so it takes a lot of calculations until you start repeating yourself. I understand that. Okay. Well, look, from the little that we've heard there, I think it sounds kind of basically really interesting. I must admit, I haven't had a chance to explore this any further. But whilst everybody else is talking about this, I'm going to be thinking about prime numbers.
Well, that's probably not a bad idea. I know the Soma Lab stuff is lovely. I know, Ty, you're a big fan of the Lyra. You know, you say you kind of get it out and create these kind of... But even that, which is pretty damn obscure, feels like it's probably easier to predict than this.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I've got the Lyra and I've got the Pulsar 23 as well, and I love what they do. And so when I saw this, I really think it's kind of, in terms of the predictability, the Lyra, you can kind of work out more or less what could be happening, and then it'll throw a curveball. And I think it's kind of the same with the Pulsar. You think you know where it's going until you make that one connection, and all of a sudden it's gone somewhere that you have no idea what's happening. I think what I like about this is literally from the get-go, you haven't got a clue what the hell's going on. And I actually think that's good. And I think that's really creative, and it's almost like the fact that the controls don't have normal relationship to what it says on there, and the fact that when you click in the reverse, you can literally just reverse chunks. You're not reversing the whole thing. You can literally just click in reversing certain bits that then go to granular engines. No one has a clue, or there's no predictability about this, and I absolutely love. I mean, it gets boring now. Yeah, I pre-ordered one, so it's really. Yeah, I know you're exactly right. It is literally just for long, extended soundscapes, and you'll then find that the same with the Lyra. You find that sweet spot, and then you record it or sample it, and then that becomes, kind of the beginning or a track or an atmosphere. But it's all about getting completely lost in the unpredictability of it and creating these huge soundscapes.
Yeah, I suppose it's like getting into the flow. He's very kind of keen on this. And again, there's a shot later on in the video of the internals of it. And if you've ever looked inside any of the Soma stuff, it's built in a very pleasing aesthetic way with really high quality point-to-point wiring and all that. So this is €480, which may sound like a lot, but it's, I mean, considering that level of craftsmanship that's gone into it, I think that's probably quite reasonable. Yeah. I don't know whether the Pulsar, I know Matt Hodson's a massive fan of the Pulsar. I don't know how you feel about it. It is a great drum machine, I have to say. I've been using it recently for a couple of things, and it's really, really good.
I'm jealous. I don't have one. I know a friend of mine does, and it's just brilliant. I mean, this thing, I did kind of watch the video quite carefully, and they talk about it being inspired by the Eno and Robert Fripp's Frippotonic stuff, which was a lot of tape loops and things going on. And like, where it becomes unpredictable is there's 4 different delay settings. One of the delays, or 4 different delay types, if you like, and one of them is 2 delays side by side that just drift in and out with each other, and they don't really describe how you control that drift. So it just
you don't. You don't. That's the answer. You don't.
And there's this brilliant line where he says, "We've it's something along the lines of, we've worked really hard to make the controls." To make as few controls as possible, do all the important stuff, so you don't have to stop meditating whilst you're using it, and you're kind of completely off there. They don't actually say what the controls do, but you don't have. You can basically do it whilst you're asleep, kind of thing. It sounds great. What I really like is that it's a hardware unit, because you could probably do this kind of stuff with similar algorithms as a plugin. But this thing is so beautifully built. It's all 32-bit inside. It's, as you say, I haven't looked inside one, but the quality in there is great. And I don't think it's expensive, given the cost of some of these really top-end pedals that you can get, the Strymon stuff and all that, which sound amazing too. This just seems to be almost a synth in its own right, which you could use as a sound generating tool anyway. It's very much of a particular style, isn't it? You're just going to do
I think so.
Evolving ambient things.
I wonder if we're getting, I mean, it feels like we're getting maybe towards the, because I'm a big fan of noodly and ambient stuff, but I'm wondering whether we're starting to get to the kind of the prog rock phase just before the punk of a new music technology kicks in, and everybody's just kind of like, I'm a bit over this. Maybe we need something that's a bit more pointy and staccato.
Well, I think joking aside, I think it's coming back to one of the next topics we're going to do, if we do it, about shimmer verbs.
Yeah,
because I think that's. I mean, do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to talk about it when we talk
we could. Well, there is actually,
because I think there's a cross,
together.
I think they cross over there. Because
I'll put that in quickly. This was the shimmer verb. I'm just trying to find out what the number of the video is. SineVibes, that's SineVibes or SineVibes. Yeah, this is the new version 2 of which is Luminance2 version 2, which is very timely. Actually, that's very timely for you, Steve, because it sounds like that's a CP70 or CP80 into that shimmer verb. But yeah, version 2 has got more stuff. I'll stop there because I know, Ty, you were about to come in, and then I'll come over to you, Steve.
It's only because, I mean, look, we all love a good shimmer verb. It's great, and but I'm over it now. I'm so over it. I mean, kind of.
It's all about the submarine shimmer. That's the one.
The one going down. Yeah. Okay.
That's way better.
Well, do you know what? Yeah, I won't argue with that, because at least it's a different take on it. At least it's going in a different direction. But for me, it's very much feels like, and I think you used it in one of the emails, it's very much the kind of the gated reverb of 1984. And it's that we've been there now. We've seen it. We've done it, and it's lovely. But I kind of want it to go away. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing at the moment now is deliberately the opposite of that. And it's very dry.
No reverb, right?
No reverb, literally nothing. It's just very, very dry and very exposed. And because what it seemed to me was Shimmerverb just became not only a cliche, which is never great, but it almost became a cliche of itself. And it became the easy option. It got to a stage where you could do anything, and if you put Shimmerverb on it, it just sounded great.
Well,
and it sounded wonderful.
It's also there is a bit of it's a lazy option because 1 or 2 notes can kind of.
That's it. Yeah. And the moment that happens, in any kind of effect or any kind of style, at the moment that happens, you have to turn around and go, okay, now's the time to kind of cut loose. And don't get me wrong, Shimmerverb will be back. Give it 15 years, 20 years. Shimmerverb will be back.
But are we talking all modulated reverbs or just shimmer?
No, I know what you mean about the submarine verb, because it does sound different. And I mean, if people don't know what we're talking about, basically,
it's
rather
preset
than the pitch
on
going up, rather than the pitch going up, basically the harmonic pitch goes down. That's all. I mean, that's the only difference. But but the reason it's a more pleasing effect is no other reason than we're not hearing it constantly. And skip forward a year when everyone's using that, and we'll all be sick of that as well. Yeah. So it's like everything. The moment anything gets any kind of overkill and it becomes an easy option, then no, it's time for it to go. And don't get me wrong, I've got lots of, I love my Eventides and I love all the Shimmerverbs, but no, it's time to move on, really, I think.
I don't know, Steve. I mean, I've thought of you because I just thought there's the CP. I know you've got a CP, but it's interesting. I mean, I'm trying to think, are we getting, I'm not sure if we are getting actual shimmer on advertising. It's like that time when you bamboo trem or whatever. I'm trying to think whether or not I've heard that. I must have done. Maybe I'm just.
I was thinking as Ty was talking there. I know exactly what you mean, Ty, about it being a cliche, and that thing about you stick it on something and you can just play 1 note and it sounds great and it feels a little bit easy. But then I'm just thinking, I don't think I've heard Shimmerverb in a sort of commercial production. I don't mean like an advert or anything, but I'm just thinking in a sort of contemporary record. I don't think I've actually heard it on record. And in fact, actually, the first time I heard Shimmerverb was on an album called Filigree and Shadow.
Yeah,
that came
absolutely.
out on 4AD. This Mortal Coil was the name of the act. It was like a sort of various artist things where the guy who ran the company, a chap called Ivo, got his favourite singers to sing his favourite songs. And there's a little instrumental tune, I'll get the title of it in a moment, where you can hear the Shimmerverb. It's a beautiful thing, just a little bit of guitar being played and this sort of cloud of delightfulness going on behind it. But in terms of records, I don't know. I don't know if I've actually heard it out in the wild.
I think.
But can I just say the difference is there? The difference is there, Steve. Is the fact that because I love this Mortal Coil, and you're right. That effect is all over Filigree and Shadow, and it's all over Blood, which was the album after that. But the thing about it is that it wasn't actually a Shimmerverb. It was basically they chained an Eventide harmonizer that then went into a reverb. So in other words, there was a creative process where they had the individual elements and they had the foresight to go, okay, hang on, if we put the output of the harmonizer into a long reverb, what will happen? And that for me is exactly as you say, that's when it's creative and that's when it's new. But the moment now you can just for 15 quid or tenner just load in a preset and it automatically does all that, is for me is just too easy.
Well, I'd just like to also point out the reason we're not seeing it in modern productions is because modern production is very much more about minimalism at the moment. If we're talking pop, like US charts, it's like, maybe 4 or 5 things. I did a great interview with Federico Vinva where he talks about this kind of these rules that have been applied. It's Rick Rubin's rules where it's like you can only have 4 things or 5 things, and that's what Kanye uses because he worked with. There's some really interesting. So Shimmer would just blot out all of that possibility, but I haven't come to Dom yet because Dom obviously are you thinking about putting a shimmer on your Incinerator?
Funny, I got my list here.
Incinerator.
I just crossed off shimmer number 2 and it was all lined up ready to go, so I've crossed that one off the list. No, I was just going to say the same thing about the minimalistic thing about stuff's going. I mean, maybe I'm getting to hear it on TV shows and film scores and that kind of thing a little bit when you do big synthy kind of noises, but it's an instant gratification thing, and I think we might be a little too focused on it because we're obviously there in the thing. Do people really care? I guess it's not overused enough in people's faces for them to go in the same way that, say, a dubstep wobble became a real joke for a while, but it's heading that way because it sounds great. So if you're using modular stuff or something very one line and a kick drum and a hi-hat, sticking something like that on it is obviously going to make it go bosh, especially if you're mixing on headphones. But yeah, it's going to be one of those things that just disappears, I think, isn't it? And it doesn't offend me quite as much as the other guys, but I think because it isn't all over the charts.
I'm just worried now that my entire creative output has just been devalued, and I have to completely rethink myself. I think I'm going to need some time to think about that while I play a message from our friends over at Modal. So, yes, I want to tell you folks about the Cobalt 8, which I reviewed. 8-voice extended virtual analog synth with innovative oscillator with 34 algorithms, morphable 4-pole ladder filter, 29 endless encoders for real-time control, internal sequencer and arpeggiator, MPE support for expression, which I can thoroughly recommend, works great. Modal app for Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, VST and AU. If you want to find out more about that, check out the URL bit.ly/get_modal. Thank you very much to them for supporting us on the show. Yes, it's an interesting argument, I think, and I guess overuse is what does it, and I'm guilty, my lad, and I suppose that's just I'll just have to live with that. I don't know.
But I mean, I just would add one extra thing on this, Nick, which is that one thing that I've rather enjoyed from this kind of rather late vintage that I'm inhabiting at the moment is looking back over the years and reflecting on things that were overused at the time that give a specific sort of date stamp to when they were used. So I'm thinking of things like the DX7 bass, bass 1, I think it was called, or the gated reverb. And at the time, it can feel a little bit irritating as being overused. But with a nostalgic look, it's nice to be able to spot, that record was probably made in 1987, or this tune was made in 2015 or whatever. And that's something I feel that we've kind of missed a little bit in the previous decade. The only thing I can think of that sort of date stamps the 10Ts, at least in the stuff that I listen to, is the overuse of the Serum multiband compressor, which seemed to be on every single dance tune that I heard for, what would it be, 6 years? I don't know. But I think there's something nice about that. So I think, maybe this irritation that we find now will become fondness in time.
I'm not irritated. I'm living the dream.
But I mean, I agree, especially, it would be, I just want to get to the stage where there will be a track that doesn't have side compression. That's what I really dream of. That I'm not hearing the pads pumping through on every other quaver. That would be nice. But it's that. But I will just tell you one story about gated reverb, which is quite funny, because I was a big, like we all were a big fan of gated reverb back in the day. But when I was doing the Midge album a couple of years ago, and I was doing it all, and he walked in and I was working on a track, and we were talking about what to do with the drum sounds. And I decided that I'd put gated reverb on the drums And the reason was because no one else was. No one else a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, was putting gated reverb on drums. So I did the whole drum track, this huge gated reverb. And he came up and walked into the studio. And it was just like, what the? It's just because, of course, all his career, when in the day, there was gated reverb on everything. And all he could see was it was the one thing that dated all of that stuff. And so in his head, all he feared was it was a dated sound. Whereas, exactly as Steve's saying, my argument was a lot of people don't even really know what gated reverb sounds like these days because they don't encounter it. It's not effect that's used. As it turned out of spite, there's about 4 places on that track where I kept the gated reverb just to make a point, but I had to get rid of the rest of it. But there's 4 bits where it's just gated reverb just to make a point.
Actually, one thing that gated reverb sounds really good on pads as well. It's quite. I mean, it might sound really wrong, but it creates a really interesting texture. I know
triggered gated reverb on pads sounds beautiful.
Yes, that's
with an external trigger. That can sound really beautiful.
Yeah, gosh, I remember putting an external key into a gate all those years
ago.
Gosh.
God, yeah, those drawbacks.
Yeah.
We used to put literally, rather than just reverb, I used to gate everything. If it wasn't sounding that interesting, you just gate the keyboards, just constantly. So maybe if we gated the shimmer, then we've got the new genre.
What could it be called? Gimmer? Gimmer? Yeah, I don't
Gimmer.
That'll be a genre. Yeah, if you heard that new genre, it's called Gimmer. Yeah.
Gimmer.
Gimmer, straight out of the West Country. Yeah. I don't know. That sounds a little bit dodge. There are. Okay. I do want to get this one in because it's luggage, and we. Oh, hold on.
We don't do enough luggage in this show.
We don't do enough luggage. This is the new Roland.
Can I just say, going for the really good ones here. Let's do luggage.
Well, I don't know what else would we want. Actually, this did start with the SineVibes, Luminance2, which is only $39, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So if you do want some really good shimmer reverb, or even after that shimmer assassination, then maybe you should check them out. SineVibes makes really good stuff, so do check them out. True. Anyway, back to the Roland Gig Bags. This was a news item. I had them somewhere. Where is it? Oh yes, it says move your Roland synth safely. So this is a selection of gig bags. High quality stuff, quite expensive, and it's an interesting one because transporting keyboards, I mean, nobody really these days wants a flight case. I mean, a keyboard for a flight case is, I mean, it weighs so much. It's really they're just massively impractical in most, they usually just make the keyboard too big to actually fit in your car anymore. I mean, it's just an absolute nightmare. So gig bags are kind of a big thing, and Roland have obviously spotted a little gap in the market, and we can move, I guess other synths can fit in there, but they're quite pricey. Well, not pricey. They're a premium product, shall we say. So you can spend up to 360. So an 88 key keyboard gig bag with wheels would be $369. That's a lot of cash. I guess that's the top one up there. But it really just brought me, okay, so how do you transport your own things? Because, once in a while we do. I mean, it's less and less these days because we're kind of more installed and not getting out. But I don't know how you tackle that one. Dom, do you have a preferred method? Is it wrap it in a blanket and stick it on the back seat?
Not anymore. My dad made my first flight case when I was still at school out of wood for my JX3P, which was just stunning, and I still have that, which is amazing. I've still got the JX3P as well. No, when I used to bane of my life. It's worse than being a drummer back in those days because quite a lot of the guys were carrying around Simmons kit that was easily transportable, but lugging like 3 keyboards, and I just had normal flight cases and a little not hatchback, one of them cars that you could just slide stuff into the boot back in those days, some Ford something or other, and used to drive around. But at that age, you don't really care because you're just excited to be playing gigs. And this was back in the days of playing for Boy George and stuff. So we were playing some really fun things, and it was just a big laugh. But I remember kind of like I had a lift in my place I was living, and the lift failed one day, and I had to climb up like kind of 6 flights of stairs one by one with these flight cases and stuff. So gig bags would be good. The only thing that you've just got to have flight cases for is if you're flying. I wouldn't trust a gig bag in the hold of the the plane. Although having said that, looking at these Roland ones, they do seem uber padded, and I mean like wheels and stuff. It's as close as you can get to something metal, but sort of more lightweight canvas thing, I think. But I just don't really gig anymore. So
have the need. Just transporting keyboards is actually really
a nightmare.
It's a bit. It's just like the thing that's shaped in a way that makes it really hard to move. I know, Steve. Do you have a need? Do you have another room with boxes and cases for all of the keyboards you've got in the house?
I have a shed. Do you know, one of my saddest memories, I suppose, at the start of lockdown was going into my shed and just seeing a stack of my flight cases with a stack of toilet paper on top of it. That's 2020. So
it was you.
I've just
yeah, quite.
Well, I've had a very comfortable year, but it was funny. Dominic was just talking about gig bags and taking them onto planes, because I remember a long time ago, I did a gig in Italy, in Milan, and my Roland JD 800, which is a big thing, I was just carrying it around in a gig bag, but I thought, I didn't think, I just put it in to the holes. And of course, when it came out, it was a different instrument. The modulation stick had gone, it was bashed. But what was even worse was that I decided, I don't know why, that I'd put my optical disc drive, which had all my samples on, in the gig bag with the JD800. So of course that wasn't working when that came out. And so I spent an afternoon with a promoter who couldn't speak any English, driving around the streets of Milan, trying to find a replacement, really quite esoteric optical disc drive for my samples. And the whole time me thinking, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off. It's 1996. Everything's in the sampler. In the end, the gig was in a sort of club that was so big, and it was so busy, and the PA was so bad. I think we basically got away with it. I don't think anybody noticed that my modulation stick had gone, as had all my other sounds.
That's a nightmare.
Oh yeah, it really was. But no, I think these days when I've been gigging, I know what you mean about flight cases. I mean, I got a flight case for the JD800, but of course the problem with it was so big, it basically doubled the weight of the thing. And the thing was already like, I don't know, 15 kilograms or something. So it became impractical to carry that around if you're traveling internationally, at least by air. So what I've done recently is transport things around in a selection of gig bags, like the sort of things that you would expect DJs to use. So you'll know, I mean, you're not using sort of long keyboards like this live, but rather smaller ones. Items like the Korg Op 6 is perfect, which I've got just here, because it's small-ish, it's definitely light, and it's something you can stick over your shoulders in a bag that would survive being put in the back of a car.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch. I've got one of those DJ kit bags as well, because it fits the Dominion one. When I was gigging, I started to get cases for everything that would just go in a bag. But I mean, there's always that temptation, isn't there? It's like, oh, this is a big padded bag, and I could put like the BeatStep Pro in there as well. But then, really, if it gets tipped up, that thing is going to just slide around and take all the fader caps off, snap the ends off the knobs, all that kind of thing. I remember, Ty, when you came down to our that night in Bristol, where you basically created that enormous tabletop of stuff, which that was the Salt Cafe. I thoroughly recommend you watch that. It was a great evening, and but you kind of built a bespoke board for it all to fit on, so you could put it all in one thing. You know, that's dedication. So how do you transport now?
Yeah, I mean, you say dedication, it was stupidity, let's be honest, at the end of the day, because it was, there was just no other way of, because that's what I wanted, there was no other way of doing it other than getting something built that housed everything. But in everyday use, I mean, I don't do a lot of live stuff anymore. When I did do live stuff, I did exactly the same as the other guys in that I got flight cases. But the one that really finished me off was I was doing, it was a Trinity, one of the main ones was a Trinity Pro X, and the Trinity Pro X was stupidly heavy. And then because I had like the most solid case built for it, that was even heavier than the synth. And the synth was like 30 something kilos, 34 kilos or something.
Yeah, you're not allowed to lift that sort of weight anymore, are we?
And the case was heavier than the synth. I mean, it was, and I only did one tour with that, and then I kind of cut down, and I went down to just a stage 2, and for doing live stuff, and that was in a gig bag, and everything else I did like everyone else did, like Steve was saying, everything went into individual gig bags over my shoulders when I'd be going onto airplanes with all these, everything over all my shoulders and paying extra for. And amazingly, I got stopped at every single airport and I had to empty the entire thing. We've all been there where you empty out everything, which I was doing on multiple of these gig bags. But the main Nord went in its own bag. But I have to say now, if I did anything live-wise, I would do the rich route, which is basically they just hire it. I take the data and they just hire it at the other end. Although that can backfire, because I did a show, I did a proms over in Ireland a few years ago where I completely gave them all the specification of what I've needed, and I turned up with the USB stick to stick it in, and I'd said a stage 2, and they decided to supply a stage 2 plus, and the 2 and the 2 plus, the data doesn't cross over.
Oh dear!
Yeah,
it's like the Waitrose of or the supermarket that's that you get deliveries, you get substitution list, don't you? It's like, yeah, that's stuff you need. Okay, you wanted noodles. Here's Brillo pads. Yeah,
yeah, and because all of these samples in it were completely bespoke to the gig, and none of them would load it. It was a very interesting evening. It started. I arrived at about 7 o'clock at the hotel, and I can't remember when I actually got to sleep, trying to sort it out, and it wasn't a fun evening, I have to say. Yeah. But the main problem I have, because I don't do live stuff, the main problem I have is if I'm moving stuff, if anything goes down to be repaired or sent away or something. But the thing is, I keep the boxes for everything, every single thing. I keep the boxes for I have a quite a big loft that essentially you can't get in just for synth boxes, and the only one that is really a pain, is
the one at the back. Yeah,
is that thing, because that's 100 kilos, and
the CS, yeah, absolutely,
the CS80, because that when that has, I'd love to say if it has to go back to Kent, but it's a CS80, so when it has to go back to Kent to look at, that becomes a real pain in the...
That's for those who don't know, that's Kent Spong, who's the sort of UK expert in fixing CS80s, and at any given time he might have 8 or 10 on his premises where he's fixing, the various and inevitable things that will go wrong with them, right? Yeah.
But other than that, it's just, if I do have to move anything, it's just shoved in its box, basically.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? That whole data approach. I mean, that Rich sussed it. You kind of almost got to find the keyboard or the technology that is so easy, is so ubiquitous that you can then just plug in and it'll work. And that's kind of the answer. And I suppose that's what computers and laptop and MIDI controller is. That's why it's become so popular, because you can turn up and it's like, I don't care what it is, because I could even, if as long as I've got 88 keys, I know that I can maybe, have mapping software that will just do my drums in the bottom half or whatever. And it's just, so you don't necessarily need all that, but it makes it, you're going to end up with a certain homogeny. Everybody's got a laptop and a Nord stage or whatever it, insert easiest to hire keyboard, which is possibly why we see so many of these things around the place.
But I think something that's kind of interesting about moving around data is having DJ'd for a very long time. Back in the day, I was carrying around, a whole CS80 worth of vinyl to every gig. But these days, me and pretty much everybody else just takes one of these, little flash drive. And the convenience of that is absolutely extraordinary. And it's been such a revolution to be able to take an entire record collection with you on a stick like that. it's much easier to take on aeroplanes and all that kind of thing.
And you can have
also,
backups with you and leave a backup in the cloud. So, there's all sorts of stuff you could do.
Well, yeah,
That's
precisely. The only drawback is there's just less for you to do with your hands. You've got to develop more of that kind of hand ballet that we were discussing.
So hot faders.
That's the one. You have to do that because somewhere in that room that you're playing, there'll be the man who's paying you, and if you don't look like you're doing anything, it's going to have an effect on your invoice.
Here's it. What about just having like this many records that each side have got a different cover? So you just have a bespoke set of 50 records without the vinyl in, because then it won't be heavy. Or you have 2 or 3, and then you just have a different cover on each one, and you just thumb through them. And if you're DJing with the timecode deck, which would probably make sense, then you can look like you're looking through things and checking sleeve notes and stuff. You need some extra, eye candy.
Welcome to how to scam the promoter.
Pretend to be DJ. Yeah. I think if I was gigging, I'd probably just use main stage. If I was doing sort of repeated gigs where in general I needed the standard set of sounds, then it would be main stage now and a decent controller. But most of my stuff, there was quite a lot of live stuff to start with, but then I just ended up in the studio, and there would be different studios all the time with different remixes and stuff. So then you just had to bring anything because you didn't really know what kind of sounds you wanted to create. Well,
that's where now there's so many little desktop doodads and whatnot. Now you need a flight case that can take like 20 synths rather than one big one. You need your Volca case and your whatever it is, your Electron case, and you can actually have the whole lot in one sort of reasonably. I suppose you can bring a lot of different things. I mean, if you're bringing a polybrute, for instance, or a matrix brute, that's the tricky stuff, because that just is heavy, And or if you want an electric piano, sometimes a Rhodes or a Whirly is what you need, and that's why the hire business is such a big thing, I suppose.
Totally.
Well, that feels
Hammond
like
organs and stuff.
It feels like a good point at which to end things. I want to say thank you very much to everybody. It's been a pleasure having you. And like I say, we're looking for sponsorship for caffeine-based hair products. Just contact me at Sonicstate, and we'll work out a deal. I can't speak for everybody, of course, but I'll speak for myself. But yeah, lovely to have you. And thank you very much to all our friends in the IRC and in the chat. There's been plenty of people. Thanks to those people who've put in super stickers and super comments. Very much appreciated. That will go towards the inevitable massive drink fest or celebration, food, whatever we do, when we can all finally get together and have a kind of big old Sonic Talk knees up, which I'm very much looking forward to. That indeed. But Steve, thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure as ever. Lovely to, and I'm really. I like the old Dutch master kind of side window look that you've got there. It's very very classy and classic. Usually it's on the other side. I should have reversed your input so that you kind of it's the classic girl with the pearl earring, or the any of the other Vandermeer or Bruegel or any of that lot. But hey, pretty good effort.
Well, thank you. There's a beautiful tree just here. It's an ancient, well, I say ancient, 120-year-old elm tree. Just here,
still going.
You
nice.
Can't see from the shop, but it's a beautiful companion in my music room.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Well, thanks for joining us. And also, Mr. Ty Unwin, thank you for joining us too, making time of your busy schedule. I know you're in the middle of stuff. And not only that, but you're having to plan your patch bays and tedious stuff like that. Or do you like that sort of thing?
No, I hate it. I used to absolutely love it. And now the whole thing has become so obscene. I absolutely hate it. Hate every second of it.
Right.
So thanks for bringing it up. Really appreciate it.
Well, I'm sorry. I'd be thinking, I think just you're going to have to go for like those MADI, and then, just have everything so you can recall the patches.
It's a complete,
digitally.
There's a complete MADI rig down there for everything. But even so, there's still
not enough.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
but thank you.
Yeah, you have my sympathy and also a little bit of envy at the same time. So that's perfect. Yeah. And of course, Mr. Dominic Hawken on the launch day of the Incinerator.
Thank you.
Go back and just count the number of emails that come in and say all those great plaudits, and it's the best thing I've ever tried, and also the success of the sales and all that. I wish you all the best with that.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for Ty's comment earlier as well. And everything. Yeah, no, it's exciting. It's the first thing I've ever done like this. So, yeah, absolutely, I can't complain. But thanks very much indeed for letting me to come on the launch day and at least talk about it as well. So, thank you.
No problem. Okay, well, that's it for this time. Like I say, I think I've got the Korg SQ64 review to finish. I've got a review with Federico Vinvar, which is really a really interesting chat with a kind of big producer in LA, multiple Grammys, very, very interesting bloke. So that'll be coming up soon as well. Well, that's it for this week. We'll say goodbye and thank you very much, everybody. We'll wave out and see you all next time. That'll be it for Sonic Talk. Thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.